that don't have experiences. So you're like, for me, I'm talking about poor kids. So it doesn't matter the
Right.
race. It's like, did you have access to that experience?
Right.
Because even when I took some of those tests, like I know there was things I got wrong because I had never seen that before. I'd never been exposed to that. So I think we're doing a good job, and we probably need to keep doing it. We need to be very careful on using these tests for any kid, but more than race, we need to think about language, right? So
Right.
like ELL learners, socioeconomic status, parental education levels, what kind of exposure have these kids had? Because essentially, what an IQ test does, a lot of these vocab pieces, they really just tell you how much have you been, how much vocabulary has been used in your home
Right.
and how much exposure have you had. That's
Right.
literally what the vocab pieces of a lot of these tests do. Because that's called, there's two kinds of intelligence. There's crystallized and there's fluid. And
Right.
that intelligence is called crystallized intelligence. It's what we acquire in our lifetime. And crystallized intelligence, verbal intelligence, can change with experience and exposure.
I
I
agree.
know for me, it changed. It changed tremendously as I went from high school to even college, and now even in college to adulthood, right? But fluid intelligence, that's our puzzles, our nonverbal. That's, classic scientist kind of intelligence that you think of, that's a
Right.
little different. But I think, but intelligence, most of our measures are both kinds of intelligence together. They come together to give you
Right.
a full intelligence. So I think, again, like, yeah, like we need to be careful, for sure, but not just for our African American kids, but for all kids, because not African American kids aren't the only ones that are going to show up messed up on these tests, right? Our ELL kids, again, our kids who don't have experience, exposure, who never been to a museum, who have parents
Right.
haven't talked in big words, they're not going to have that either.
Right.
And in fact, again, with back to the first point, because our demographics are changing, I feel like there's like, I just see so many more professionals that are people of color, just like
Right.
in general. Like I go to a conference, I see so many people that look like me, that look like my kids, right? And so I think like it's changing. Like you're more likely to have a Latino kid or a Black kid who scores very high on an IQ test nowadays. But
Right.
back in the day, that was different because we didn't have the same exposure, opportunity, and access.
Right.
So
Yeah, I feel like, those types of tests can be culturally biased, but like I said, it's exposure, right? It's to what have you been exposed to, and a lot of times it's really social economical more so than it's actually race. Because we have kids in our district, because we're disproportionately, Black and white, right? Because
mm-hmm,
we have a
mm-hmm,
high Latino population. So
mm-hmm.
so some of the white kids who they're probably some of the poorest in our district, they score low on these tests too, and they're always getting put in ED too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So it matters a level of exposure, right?
mm-hmm,
And so like I know with my children in particular, my own children, I've never baby talk to them. I talk to them
mm-hmm,
like I would talk to adults. So what that has done is that their reading levels have always been pretty high because there's a certain level of explanation when I use, certain words. And a lot of it just comes because I talk to adults and older kids all the time.
mm-hmm,
So I
mm-hmm,
don't know how to tone it down for toddlers, right? So
mm-hmm.
um but I just have to explain, whatever word this word means, or do you understand what this word means, and kind of give them then that definition. So when they do take these tests, they're kind of up to par because they've heard this language before
Mm-hmm.
and they've been
Mm-hmm.
exposed to museums and things like that. And that's where it's at. I think it's the really the exposure. That's why like I'm trying to get a lot of districts to take their kids on outings, man. Take their
Yes.
mod severe classes out of their city into another city, and they can get exposed to these types of things. They never get to go. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in my district, I'm sponsoring 10 kids in our mod severe class to go to prom. And
Oh,
these kids
nice.
didn't even think they got to go to prom.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's how
Mm-hmm.
segregated they are in just a regular environment. And so they need that exposure, right? And so I'm gonna make sure the aides get to go, and we're gonna pay for everything, a party bus, so they can all
Oh, that's
go,
so cool.
and so they can have that exposure. Because what kid wouldn't want to go to the prom in high school, right? That's what it's
Yeah.
all about. So, just a few more questions. Do you think there's an issue with the policy in special ed or the practice of schools and districts? Is it more of a policy versus practice type of thing, or what?
I think it's both, like, okay, for me, like IDEA, it's like Individuals with Disability Education Act. You might hear called IDEIA. 2004, because that was the Improvement Act that came out in 2004. First of all, that it needs to be updated,
Of
and
course.
a lot of times, like, I don't like the discrepancy model for specific learning disability. I have to use it because that's just what my job chooses. And you got to go with what your district says. You're not independent. But I don't really like that method, nor do I like the patterns of strengths and weakness method, because essentially those two methods really, to me, are not scientifically based. I prefer response to intervention, where we get in there, we screen all kids, and we give interventions, right? So going back to like, what do kids need individually, rather than just throwing whatever out and seeing who catches it. And so I think that's definitely a policy with IDEA that needs to change. Like, IDEA leaves it up to the states, and the states leave it up to the districts. And, I just think there's too much flexibility with that. And we go with non-scientific methods often. So policy wise, we need to like probably integrate more science and database decision-making into IDEA as part of like, the guidance of what to do. Then as far as school districts, I definitely think there also is a policy and procedure problem with school districts, because a lot of times, there's a lot of folklore in education. And what I mean by that is a lot of word of mouth, right? I told you that, you told me. So all of a sudden, it's like telephone, and the message really got totally warped along the way. And, some crazy stuff that people say, like, oh, we don't do that. We don't do such and such. And I'm like, okay, well, that's the legal thing.
That's the law. Right.
That's the law. Exactly. Like, you don't get to choose that.
Right.
And so I think, to me, what I always tell people, I say, look, you can have your policy, you can have your procedure, you can listen to me. However, at the end of the day, what you need to do is go read stuff, go read articles, go read what the law says directly, go read case law interpretations. That's how you learn and change and be better, and take this information and make your district better and change your policies. Because a lot of times there's the policy, and then there's the policy. You get what I'm saying? Like, there's the official policy, and then there's what we really do.
Right.
So it's like,
and I've been in a lot of litigation where, even though your policy said this and you've been practicing this, if you practice this more than you do what the policy says, the law will interpret your practice as your policy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And hold you to the fire. And so when I have professional developments with different teachers and different administrators, I'm quick to point that out. Like, this is what this looks like if you do not do these things. This is what the policy says. And so what I think drives me a little nuts in education is that, for as bright as everybody is supposed to be, right? Because we're all educators, right? We never update what we know.
That's right. That's right.
Like, these kids, they don't change, but we do, right? So I started in education when I was 23. I'm 47 now. So I can't use what I knew at 23.
That's right.
30 years later. You know what I mean?
That's so right. Yeah.
It's important that we can constantly update not only our knowledge of what's going on, but also our knowledge of that policy needs to change, right? Like, ID or No Child Left Behind, which is called something else, like ESSA or whatever, was originally built from Lyndon Johnson back in the 60s. Right. And so they just hunkered it down in the 90s to say, okay, this fits this. And then Obama came around in that era and we did this. Right. But Obama hasn't been in office in 8 years. So look how gradual things have changed in the last 8 years. No, matter of fact, let me rephrase that. Look how things have drastically changed in the last 3.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
2019, things were
oh my gosh,
different.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic hit and we're at a whole different level. And I'm sure you're seeing a whole different level of 100%. Behaviors now that we didn't even account for in 2019. So
100%.
Everybody needs to always stay updated in their knowledge and in their knowledge base and continue to learn. Like, educators should always want to learn, right? You're a scholar, so your job is to consistently learn. So you
Great
can
point.
The future. So,
yeah.
All right. Lastly, what I like to ask all my guests is, if you could pick 5 people to have dinner with, dead or alive, who would they be?
Ooh, okay. 5 people have dinner with, dead or alive. Okay. I love this man, Jose Martinez Diaz. He's passed away during I think 2020, late 2020. And he is a board certified behavioral analyst, doctorate level, and also clinical psychologist. And he created a lot of programs, and he was in Florida. And that man has some passion for kids, for adults, for anyone, even people who other people might consider like just throwaway. I don't know how else to say that. Like, just that's a very rude thing to say, but that's how people might describe these people that he loved, and he just was willing to get in there and help people, regardless. So
Yeah, I met him. I was on
you
a
did you
panel with him.
really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. So you said that it made me feel some kind of way because I remember him, and I did hear that he passed. So his condolences to him, but he was awesome. He was awesome.
Yeah. Amazing man, and just a passion, just like, oh God, my heart just like swells when I think of him. So I would have definitely have, did you say lunch or dinner? I can't remember.
Dinner, but lunch is
whatever, have a meal. So him, and then let's see. Okay, this Dr. Kimberly Nix Barons. I just think she's a super intelligent lady. She's also a BCBAD. She's the one who came up with fit learning. When I heard her lecture, I was like, just totally fangirling over her. Like, man, this lady is incredible. Incredible. Kobe is just, again, another one, like my heart just like, I just like say, because I'm just like, can't believe he died like that. Like, what was that? Like, that was the kickoff, right, to 2020.
Right.
Like,
it was like that happened, and then COVID, and we haven't been the same since.
It was like some kind of mess up in the universe when Kobe died. But I mean, he's just incredible. Like, just like what an athlete, what an incredible person, just the dedication that he has, like, just what a role model. So love Kobe. Let's see, two more. So I would say maybe like Magic Johnson, another one who's just like incredible, despite like things going on in his life that were, career enders for a lot of people. He just kept going. And not only did he keep going, but like business wise, he's so smart and intelligent, has made all these investments, and just a really smart man. So I really think like, I look up to him a lot. And then my last one would maybe be, I have to think about that. I'm not really like a good on keeping up with stuff, but okay, this is going to sound crazy, especially because, he's just doing some stuff that's insane right now, but Kanye, because I feel like, I loved Kanye. When Kanye came out with his first album, I was like hooked. I was going through a lot in college, and I just loved his album and just the grit that he had. There's like one particular song on that first album where he has that little lyric, like, I could let these dream killers kill my self-esteem or use my arrogance as esteem to power my dreams. Right. And that, to me, like, that song just really like helped me a lot, like through my life at that time. And I think Kanye is a true artist, despite, whatever else might be going on with him personally. I think that there's good in him. I think his mom really helped him a lot. I feel like she kept him grounded, and losing his mom was probably very traumatic for him, especially in the way that he lost her, because it was like, from what I understand, he was encouraging that, which I get. He was trying to do something nice as a son. Like, I love you, mom. You want to look good. Come on, let's do this. And then that happened so tragically. And then, of course, just getting tied up in the family there with the Kardashians. Like, I don't think they're bad people, but I think like it's just different.
Some strange stuff happens when you marry one of them.
I think it's just a different dynamic that maybe he didn't know. And then now it's like the desperation he has for his family. It's just my heart breaks for him.
I don't know if you saw the documentary on Netflix.
I haven't seen it yet. I want to sit down and watch it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah. And so I have a very, very sordid history with Kanye West. So when you watch this documentary, there's a young man in it by the name of 3H. He was his manager. 3H used to manage me. And he left me for this artist out of Chicago named Kanye West. Oh, wow. So, but I never like hated Kanye West. Like, I love his music. I love his production and all that type of stuff. I can't really say that I'm a super fan of his music now, but the first two albums, he was on point. But so I've always had a weird, and then, especially as of late, some of the comments he's made and whatnot. So I struggled to watch it, but I decided to sit down and watch it, and I thoroughly loved it. One, because it took me back to that time period, because he has all this footage from the early 2000s, early 90s, or mid to late 90s. That was an era that we kind of forget about now, because you kind of look at where rap is at now, and it's way in a different space. But you can see like the Talib Kweli's and the Mos Defs and even Dave Chappelle's and all these different people that they were all on the come up at that time. And so now you see some 20, 30 years later, you see these people at the level that they're at. It was good to see, and it was good that he archived all that stuff. Right. And you get to see the many sides of Kanye, and you do get to see his mom is in it heavy in the first couple episodes, and you get to see the relationship that they had. And now it makes more sense that he struggled when she passed.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
She was the only one that can kind of